안녕하세요. 아, 참석해 주셔서 감사해요.
That's
Chobra
pretty good.
Shi. Welcome to the Pacific episode. I've brought along my good friend Chobra, who obviously has much better insight into the Pacific scene than I do at this point. He's in Korea. I'm in the US. I've been exiled. And so he's got all the good information, especially on the Korean teams, and couldn't think of a better person to bring on as my expert for the Pacific Roster Mania episode. Like the other episodes, we're going to be going through each team, rating their roster moves this offseason, and just kind of talking about what we expect out of them in the 2026 season. So, Chobra, thank you for joining me. How are you? And can you give me a
Thanks for
thumbs up or a thumbs down on my Korean pronunciation?
thanks for having me. I would say mostly a thumbs up. Mostly a thumbs up.
Okay.
I mean, you were using words that normally people wouldn't like even learn or know from the beginning, so it was very good. Like, thanks for attending and things like that. So yeah, pretty good. Honestly,
I'll take
better
it.
than better than some of the casters that have been out here for years. So you know what? I'll give
Achilles.
you yeah. I'll give you a good grade on that. But yeah, thanks for having me. I've been doing well. Obviously, like you said, just still hanging out here in Korea, and kind of been following along the roster mania pretty excitedly because Pacific was started a little slow, but I
Yeah.
think it's now coming into fruition.
Yeah, and obviously we don't have quite all of the news yet. We're still waiting on a couple of
Yeah.
Japanese teams and stuff to get their rosters in order, but we'll do our best. As usual, we're going to be using the vctstats.com/rostermania website. So shout out to that guy or group of people who created that to track all of the moves. And yeah, I mean, I guess let's just go ahead and hop right in. Um, we've been doing sort of like worst to first, but I'm going to start with the Ascension teams first and foremost, just because they are new to the league. So, you know what? Let's just go ahead and hop right into SLT. Full Sense is kind of we'll touch on that a little
Right.
bit, but yeah, let's talk about SLT. So, they ascended. They looked exciting and fun during Ascension. I was a little bit surprised, honestly, that they made it all the way through because I did scrim these guys like a couple of times, and
Mm,
they seemed kind of chaotic, skilled, but not totally like one direction or vision about how to
right.
play the game. And that kind of held true, but it worked in the Ascension. So what I don't know, what do you think about SLT? And obviously they're not making any roster moves, at least as far as I know.
Right.
Um, they didn't get anybody poached, as far as I know, but maybe you have some insight. Tell me a little bit about this SLT team.
So yeah, as far as I know, they're sticking together so far. Obviously, who knows what else could happen. But I'm also not too surprised about that just because I think the specifically Korean market is fairly readable, like within the existing players. Obviously there can be like new players that come up, but there's only so many limited spots unless you're speaking English. So I'm pretty sure they're sticking together. I'm kind of relieved to hear you say that about your experience scrimming them because I've always wondered if I just never because I know I didn't pay as much attention to Challengers Korea this year than I did last year. Like last year, I was following very closely. This year, I kind of just followed the surface level,
Hmm.
and I never felt that SLT was like that strong of a prospect. I was like, yeah, no, they're pretty good. Like they'll probably make playoffs, but I'm like, I'm not picking them as my favorites. And then they go on this undefeated run through the whole
Yeah.
tournament. And I'm like, okay, this is not what I saw. Like this is not the team that I was remember watching. So I definitely think something clicked for them in that like last process of losing to T1 Academy and then going into that road to ascension and then actually getting there and playing against these other teams and seeing what worked. So
Right.
I will say the thing is I don't think it was necessarily a fluke. I think they just realized that they can lean into their strengths
Hmm.
at that tournament. And they give them confidence. And now that they've played at the Soup Valorant League (SVL), I think it was really good for them because while it's a little bit less pressure, they can now have this extra added confidence of, oh, it could still also work for at least a certain number of tier one teams in Pacific, right? Like we can actually still win this. It's not like we're just going to get blasted. And I know specifically that's something that Nongshim struggled with
Hmm.
coming into 2025 is that they were pretty confident. They got into kickoff, they couldn't beat DRX, and they were like, "We've hit a wall. Like we can't beat
Right.
these guys," and they just got crushed. So yeah, I'm very excited. In fact, I almost hope that they just don't lose that confidence, even if they lose a couple maps or matches, because It is fresh. It's new. I think it has legs, especially in this current meta that we're potentially heading into. So I'm pretty excited for this team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they um, have, if you look back at the results in Korea, right, they were losing essentially to the academy teams of the tier one teams and then beating everybody
Yeah.
else. And then once they get to Ascension, they beat mostly, or I guess almost entirely non-Korean teams, and then they get to the Soup Valorant League and they lose to Korean teams, beat RRQ. So
Yeah.
it is a little bit like maybe Big Brother syndrome
It
potentially,
could be.
or
Yeah.
simply just that, they are, I guess, in theory, they're like one tier below the Korean talent because you would expect these teams to have picked them up otherwise. But I don't know. I guess instead of giving them a grade for their GMing in the offseason, since they're going to keep their roster, what sort of percentage chance would you say that they will have the same five by, let's say, the start of stage two? I think by the end of the year, there's a
Ooh.
very good chance that they have a different roster just because that's kind of how it goes. But
Hmm.
yeah, mid season, will they make a move, do you think?
Mid-season. Oh man. I I could see it. I will give it like a 45%.
Okay.
45% chance that they make a change.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I might be downgrading it just because I kind of want them to stick together and see how
Sure.
far they go. Yeah,
Sure. Sure.
but 45%,
Cool. And before we move on to the next team, we've all seen the players play, but I don't really recognize these coaches at all. Do you know these guys at all? Have you seen them on other teams in the Korean scene, or are they kind of new to you as well?
I wouldn't say that I'm very familiar with them. Obviously, they were with SLT the whole time, and then I believe TK9 was part of CNJ before that.
Okay.
So they've been around, but not like making waves before. Just kind of a name I've always recognized of like, okay, yeah, like he's coached before. So I've kind of followed that along. But I do know that, um, like I was following kind of his journey, at Ascension and then afterwards, and he was always kind of very tied into the history of the Korean coaches and like following, certain people's careers and what they were doing with their teams. So he's been kind of striving for that as well. So it's a big breakout for the head coach.
Okay. Very cool. Um, awesome. Well, let's move on to our other Ascension team, um, which is your guys, the
No,
Nongshim
good old
RedForce.
Nongshim. Yep.
Nongshim reascending, keeping the roster of RB, X Ross, Francis, Danby, and Ivy. Um, I assume they'll keep the same roster. They looked pretty good at Ascension with this five, even though X Ross, who was essentially just a Yoru player last year, had switched over to
Yep.
Smokes and had to, do a little bit of learning on the fly. Um, Persia moved off the roster, benched. Do you know if he's like a sixth, or is he looking for a team, or do you have any idea what's going on with Persia?
So officially, he his contract is mutually terminated. So he's technically no longer under the Nongshim banner.
Okay,
But I know he's looking. He posted that he was looking for a team. I don't know specifically like how many trials he's gotten or anything like that. So we'll see. But I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where I would love to see him back, like under the Nongshim banner, but also nobody wants to be a sixth man, right? Like
true.
no player like wants to be on the bench. So it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, if he wants to be on a starting roster, then I totally understand it. Totally understand it. So I would love to see him get a shot, but if not, like maybe there's a chance that he comes
Yeah,
back and he could be of help, even on stage sometimes. So we'll see.
sure. Okay, so I guess because this team hasn't really made any changes this offseason, let's talk a little bit about the X Ross move. Just sort
Hmm.
of like, what did you see from him during Ascension? And I guess, do you have any sort of like maybe history insights into him during maybe like the 2025 season, in like tier two or whatever?
So, specifically about X Ross, I've always rated him very highly. He was one of those players where when Nongshim like acquired SPG and they also announced that we're keeping X Ross, but like nobody else, I was like, okay, that like they know what they're doing. Like I'm excited
Hmm.
for this because that guy you should keep, even if he's underage right now. Because even when he was playing before, like I would almost argue that he was the biggest reason the old Nongshim roster even contended against SPG. Like I would
Mm.
argue that he was the one kind of keeping them in during the important moments. Like, yeah, PKM had big clutches and breakout games. And Yeoman had some good maps that he was IGLing, but I feel like Xross was the one that was giving SPG the most trouble, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I've always believed that he was a pretty smart player, and I think that's what I like because we have like for instance, SLT has a ton of cracked aimers. Like we know that these guys exist, but someone who can kind of flex around because he was a primarily Euro player, but he was still swapping just enough like variety of agents that I was like, okay, this guy could be a flex as well. It's not just like flashes or just dive duelists. So I was very excited, honestly, when like I had a feeling. I mean, especially because you kept him on the roster anyway on the contract. I had a feeling he was probably going to play at Ascension. I said throughout the whole year because some people knowers were asking about X Ross, and I kept saying I would also put him in.
Hmm.
However, who do you take out of the existing 5 Nongshim roster? Like, I have no idea. But
Right.
but also the worst part is like I would almost put him in for anybody, and I wouldn't mind that, right? Like if the announcement came, other than Francis, I guess, because at the time he was IGLing. So
Yeah.
yeah. Other than that, I was like, if the announcement comes, it's like it's gonna suck, but also I don't really mind. Like all of them seem like good replacements. So yeah, I was excited. I would say at Ascension, what I saw was, I think the key difference is, I think one of the biggest benefits, obviously, I don't know the details, but the biggest benefits I could feel from the outside for Persia was that he was kind of this rock for the team in the server, and maybe
Hmm.
even outside of the server as the oldest brother at the time. Because I know the coaches told me about that, where they were like, yeah, as the year went on, we actually kind of learned that we could tell that Persia actually had a big impact as an older brother
Hmm.
outside of the server. So that helped. Yeah. Sorry. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ask, like, that's sort of like the age culture of Korean
Hmm.
esports is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. Like having a young on the team is
Right.
like kind of important, right? In a lot of cases,
Yeah.
and there's lots of like respect and sort of like deference given to the older people in
Mhm.
the scene. Can you maybe like explain a little bit, because that I think that does play some roles like going forward in some of these teams that we'll talk about later as well too.
Right. Yeah, so obviously, Korea, there is a kind of given social hierarchy with age.
Hmm.
Now, like you said, it's considered to be very important. At times, it can brush the wrong way, right? Because it's kind of just a given, and then maybe you don't get along, and you're like, okay, well, now I hate this hierarchy that exists in our culture. So it can
Sure.
happen. But I think it's a lot of times the reason it's important is, especially among, I would say, well, actually, no, I guess you don't even have to separate it, but just in general, because you go in with the assumption that, okay, I have to respect my elders, even if it's a young, like an older brother, right, just by a couple of years.
Hmm.
And then if they are also mature enough, they'll still like try to take care of you in their own way. You might not have the same personality, but they'll be on the lookout for you. Like they'll be the one that will try to reach out first to like, hey, let's go grab some food after
Hmm.
scrims or whatever, like things like that. So I think they naturally kind of end up acting as the leader, I guess, not IGL, but like a captain type role, even if they're
Hmm.
not the given captain, where they can kind of offload some of that mental pressure that exists within a team.
Hmm.
So yeah, so there's pros and cons of this, right? Because the pro is that without forcing it, it can naturally exist to a certain level. Especially if they're mature enough to kind of take it upon themselves. The con is either they don't get along and now the younger guys hate it even more, or that older guy also was like, "Well, I never asked for this, right? Like, I never
Right.
asked to be the guy that was like taking care of my younger siblings, so to speak." So
Sure. 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 Sure.
yeah, so that can happen. But I think Persia, like even personality wise, for anyone who's like met the team, you'll kind of know that Persia's kind of he's just like, yeah, like the young ones, they're running around, like, yeah, here I am, Uncle Persia, just watching
Yeah.
over the kids. So I think that had a pretty intangible positive impact.
Okay.
However, I think the difference is that with RB joining, you now had a certain level of that both in and out of the server with RB, given his experience.
Right.
And so then the difference with Extras, who was now a player who could kind of take things into his own hand when he was given the chance to play, make a smart move, try to find that timing. Whereas I think Persia was much more of that clutch player. Like he always felt more like worst case, like we've got this insurance plan of Persia.
Hmm.
Whereas I think Extras, to me, watching the games even last year or at the end of Ascension this year, Exros is the guy who was like, I'm gonna make this happen. Like I'm gonna create this
Sure.
opening for my team.
Sure.
So I feel like that's probably the biggest difference. Yeah, it's just an unfortunate circumstance, right? I think RB, like his ability to also IGL and offload that from Francis, that's just such a huge boon. So that's
Right.
probably the trade-off that happens
And
there.
was he who was IGLing at Ascension? Because I kept hearing different things. Was it Francis?
It
Was it
was
RB?
it was RB. It was
Okay.
RB from beginning to end at Ascension,
Okay,
but
because
it was
Francis was
Francis at
going
the end of stage
fucking
2.
crazy, man. He was going
Yeah.
absolutely
No.
nuclear. I was like, is this guy calling and dropping like 37 fives every map? Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah. No. He was unleashed. He was
Yeah,
released from the chains of IGLing and free to
yeah.
frag.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, and maybe you can't answer this, but obviously Xros was like a Yoru specialist, but
Mhm.
Francis played Yoru every game at Ascension, basically. Do you foresee maybe they'll, switch them back? Or is Francis just like, he's the flash guy, so he's going to play the Yoru no matter what?
So, this I know they had said publicly in Korea once, so I can
Hmm.
say this. The
Okay.
number one reason they made that role swap is because of the op, because they
Mm-hmm.
needed Francis to op.
Okay, because
No
Dampy's
one
not
else
not a
felt.
big opera, yeah.
Yeah, Domby's not a big opper. X Russ wasn't a big opper. So
I
they were
see.
like, we need this Yoru to op. So it's like, okay, well, I guess just by course of opping, you're gonna need to do this. And
Okay.
obviously Francis has also played flashes, so it kind of just worked out that way.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, cool. I mean, I'm excited to see this team. Like, I was high on this team towards the end of last year. Obviously, we scrimmed them a lot last year. We didn't scrim them too much in stage 2 because we were in the same group. But
Right.
I know this team pretty intimately, and I know that they have a ton of potential. And I think with X Ross on the roster, also just quick little kind of side story. Um, I always would ask my players this year, like, who's next up in your region, right? I'd ask Darion, who's next up in Singapore? He told me Wayne.
Ooh.
Who's next
Yeah.
up in Korea? Yutan X Russ. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
these guys know,
Okay.
like they know. So I definitely think this team could potentially make some big moves next year, but it's a tough region, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'll add is I'm very curious how the coaching staff will have matured over the
Mm-hmm.
year. I think I know also speaking with them separately, like they struggled a lot, especially Silkanon was like, man, I feel like I hit a big wall in coaching of just like, I wasn't ready for this. Like I didn't know what I
Mm-hmm.
was getting myself into. So you had a full year now, right? So
Yep.
we'll see how they've matured through that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I always thought they did a pretty good job, and so I'm definitely excited to see what they do. I would say the X-Ross move, honestly, I'd probably give it like a solid B plus, just
Mhm.
because young talent, um, playmakers. I think somebody to help Danby out a little bit will be nice as far as like sending it in, just fragging out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next team, and we're gonna do this a little bit out of order just because it's so interesting and weird, and that is the FULLSENSE addition to the league.
All right.
Obviously, Talon getting kicked out for financial reasons, but the Talon boys all staying in the league with Cruz moving over to head coach, adding I think he has like a longer name. I don't remember exactly what it is
Yeah.
fully, as the assistant coach, and then everybody on the team staying there with Leviathan staying along on FULLSENSE. Um, Talk to me about FULLSENSE. I guess maybe like a small little take on the whole situation, and then I feel like it's a
Yeah.
pretty much like just like an A move for FULLSENSE. Like, what else can you really do here?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would for the org itself, it's like as much as I think the existing challengers team, had a couple of gems. It's like, listen, you have a chance. The Talon boys obviously are very talented. We know that. So for Full Sense itself, like big move, good move, obviously for the org. Um, yeah, just my brief conclusion on the overall scenario is, I do think it obviously sucks. I think once again, I get at its core, regardless of all the slight differences in messaging across the timeline, at its core, I get what Riot wants to avoid of like players basically kind of owning slots and
Hmm.
having that power like financially. I get that you want this to be a org to org business plan, but also uh, in situations like this, like if the conclusion is that the players might get screwed, it's like, well, that also doesn't just feel good. Like the players being the lowest priority also doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
My conclusion was this, without knowing all the details, at the very least, if you're going to prioritize org stuff like number one de facto, then I think they also need an internal rule of we need to make these decisions before the roster or the trades begin, before
Hmm.
the trades begin. So if you do that at least before the market, it still sucks, but at least the players have kind of the same agency as other free agents, right?
Right.
Whereas, yeah, if you do it at the end of November, it's like, well, everyone else already has like rosters, so I
Yep.
don't know where I'm gonna go.
Oh, I'm
And I get
familiar with that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I just think it's like you got to at least do more of your due diligence. Emergencies can happen. I get it, but surely you have emergency plans already anyway for teams that like you might have to kick out during the midseason anyway. So that's my take. I do think there needs to be some more care about players, whether it's giving them more power or timeline. Giving them a little bit more clarity.
Hmm.
But yeah, for the full sense org, I mean, listen, it sucks. I mean, it's kind of this in some ways, it's kind of similar with the Nongshim buying out the entire SPG org, right? Of like, it sucks to let the original guys go. They were talented, but
Hmm.
you got this chance. These guys look promising. I mean, especially for full since they were already in tier one as a partner org. You take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, like the, the keeping Leviathan, like he probably was their best player. Like I definitely know, like he was a name that a lot of people were talking about last year as being like a prospect going into the 2026 season, just for being pulled up into tier one anyway.
Mm,
I was fairly impressed with their whole team at Ascension. Like Sephiroth had some really good moments. Apinia had some really good moments, and I've known these guys. We scrim them sometimes as well. But as far as like, if you had to keep one person, I think it was going to be Leviathan, and I think that he kind of fits the role that they needed also, right? Because Cruz was sort of playing mostly that smokes role with like a bit of flexing around, and that's kind of what Leviathan does as well. At least that's what he was doing for Full Sense before. I would assume that they'll probably keep Thigh on Duelist. Primi playing that
hmm
weird flex second in, third in /
Right.
lurking sometimes role, and then just kind of run it back with whatever they're doing. Um, I mean, thoughts on this team? Like, I guess will they be able to recapture some of what they had last year without Frost? Like, I guess what's your faith level in
Oof.
Cruz as a head coach?
Man, it's tough. Hmm, I'm very faithful in his ability to like understand the game and
Mm-hmm.
know the game because I think he was always throughout all of his rosters. I think he was always a big part of the heavy lifting of that, as far as I'm aware. And
Mm-hmm.
even with Frost, I know he was very hands on. Whether he had as much power or not is a different story. But I also think, again, public opinion be damned, love it or hate it, Frost always puts up results. So like
Yep.
clearly he knows what he's doing when it comes to coaching. Like he's one of those guys where it's like you might not be able to understand the process, but it is working. So
Yep.
I think getting to spend 2 years with them, I think is very helpful for Cruz, who will have seen and learned things he liked, things he didn't like. So that's great. It's just also at this point, I'm kind of convinced that player to coach is a coin flip. Some people
Yep.
get it. Yeah, some people don't. Like, I mean, obviously you would know very well. Like coaching, I would say even, I mean, you would probably know this best, but like even analyst to coaching is very different. It's a totally different skill set. So I am curious how he'll handle that. To me, one of the biggest examples of this is Solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, great IGL in Korea coaches. D plus Kia is just not really going anywhere while he's coaching. I lose complete faith in this guy. And then he finds a different combo. Suddenly he wins the first Masters for
Right.
Korea. And I'm like, okay, man, like, I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, it's tough. I wish him the best, but I'm kind of tempering my expectations actually,
Mm-hmm.
just because. The only thing I will say is, however, I still think it's a W move because who else are you getting from a Thai coach? Like, we don't know anybody.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anybody find that level of success. So Cruz IGLing would have felt more like a last grasp, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we'll try one more thing versus
It'd
Cruz
almost be like
coaching. I
player
feel
coach at that point anyway, you would think,
yeah. Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and maybe that'd be even worse, like you said, because
right.
he would just be doubling up. So I think this is better future proofing for the scene, but how it goes, I mean, we'll see. But I do think Cruz should be at least be able to command the respect of the players because he'll have been there like next to him, so they
Yeah.
know he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would probably give this move just like a straight up A, maybe even an A plus for Full Sense as an org, just because you get your shot, you grab a full Thai team to represent the region, and it's all proven players at this point. So
Mhm.
nicely done by them. All right, let's man, we are really front loading this with some good stuff. Let's go
Oh
talk about
man.
global esports.
Oh
And
boy.
I'm gonna abstain entirely, except I'm not.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, so global esports keeps Udaton and Crystal. I guess everything on this is like still not totally confirmed, but Uton
Mhm.
Crystal likely to stay. Autumn is confirmed. Javi 8K confirmed as well. The rumor is Patman is joining the team. I don't know exactly where we stand as far as confirmation goes there. And then obviously Frost has been confirmed. Vladkor rumored. I've also heard about potentially Bollix coming over from XLG, and then Platoon, my boy, also potentially staying. So really fleshing out the coaching staff, and that means obviously that Poppy, Yeoman, Ban, and yours truly have been let go from the team. So yeah,
Right.
tell me a little bit about global esports, Chopra. What do you know that I don't?
What do I know that you don't? Oh boy. I mean, I'll be honest, yeah, it's all over the place. That's for sure. But I guess it was kind of all over the place earlier this year as well. So yeah, so I don't really know. I do think just power level wise, I don't have a problem with any of these moves. I mean, I will say specifically, I'm very excited for Autumn.
Mm,
I loved watching this guy in FPX in China. I think he also matured a lot as a player, like there, right? He even got a chance to IGL for a little bit and things like that. So, very excited to watch him. I've always wanted to like. He was one of those players where I'm like, yeah, if I was ever at the same event, like I want to meet this guy just because I think he's got a good head on his shoulder. So excited, very excited for Autumn. Javi AK was one of the guys at this year's Ascension where I was like, okay, this guy's definitely worth trialing.
mhm.
Obviously that's up to you, the teams to figure it out. Yeah, it's all exciting. Obviously, Frost puts up results, so like, who can argue? I am, but I will say this as a spectator, this is like this is like the ultimate project of like, all right, Frost, you've done it before, now you've got this who knows what's going on roster. You got this hodgepodge roster. You do it again, like literally no one can say anything. Like if you do it again, if you bring them to an international, whether luck's involved or not, it doesn't matter. It's a third year in a row. It's like, all right, proven. But if not, it's like, okay, well, there's a limit to everything, isn't there? Right? Like yeah,
Yeah.
there's some things. I will just say though, and I'm sure you might have a tough time seeing from this, but it is just tough to see an org switch entire rosters every year.
Yep.
It just doesn't. The chemistry there's value. We've seen that. There's value in that every
Hmm.
year. And even this year, it's like I mean, I get it. Like Frost is coming in from a completely different, uh, obviously environment. I mean, every year the coach changes coming in from a completely different environment. So you want to make your own changes. I get that, but it's like at this point, it's looking like there's still not going to be a core three retained, right?
Hmm.
It's going to be maximum two, Yudoton and Crystal. Again, understandable. The new players are good, but it's like you're basically starting fresh again.
Yep.
So yeah, so I don't know. Individually speaking, though, the players that were let go, like Poppy, it sucks, but I mean, I was hyping him up, and he, for whatever reasons, wasn't able to put up, the hype that he had delivered in tier two prior. Yo Man, as much as he was one of those guys that I was always rooting for, I don't think ever really found both on Gen G and GE, never really found his footing. And then Ban, I mean, I think just it wasn't even really like given as much agency in GE because obviously it wasn't the full year. So um yeah, so I don't have a problem with any of that. Like, right, this is one of those roster moves where on paper I'm like, I give it a pass. Like I'm not giving it an A, B, or C. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
it's a
Okay.
passing grade. But I'm not a
Damn.
I'm not a
D's
big
get degrees, Chopra. D's get degrees.
but I'm not a big fan just
Okay.
because of no consistency. But I do think I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it just because I'm like, all right. I mean, it's like the final Pacific test. Like, all right, you get another brand new team, brand new org to an international Frost. It's like you and the players. All right, you're making something work because none of these guys have played with each other before either. Well,
Y-
I guess if Patman joins, I guess Javi and Patman played briefly.
yes.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
challengers. So I guess that exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that it does seem like, just to add on to this, Frost had done a interview with a Korean
Hmm.
platform, and actually a university esports journal. By the way, pretty well done. Because so if it's done by a student, the editor in chief, if they're a student, like I want to give prompts because it was actually a pretty well done interview. And there he talks about Yudo, Crystal, Autumn, and Javi's roles.
Hmm.
So I assume that Yudo and Crystal will be staying because he specifies like this is what they're going to be doing. This is why we have them. And then he
Hmm.
doesn't mention a fifth, so that's to be confirmed. But he mentions Javi will be IGLing in the server. Autumn will be their captain to kind of keep everyone in line. So I'm excited for that. I honestly, man, if he can make Javi a good IGL, oh, I give props because I think Javi has legs, but he also showed his very hard ceiling at Ascension, where if things got a little scrappy, he felt he needed to make plays. He couldn't make the calls anymore. Things
Hmm.
broke down. If Frost can make sure that he always stays locked in on the IGLing, like, damn, all right, I give you props.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep my takes brief. Obviously, I have some other knowledge that I just
Yeah,
I won't necessarily divulge. But um, as far as like the roster goes, I mean, I will just say I pitched several different rosters to GE because I was potentially going to stay there for a
right.
while in the offseason. One of those rosters did involve Frost as the head coach, with me as the assistant coach. Just because I knew that they were interested in him. I knew that he was out there shopping around. He's one of the only people that I would consider not head coaching for because I do know that he knows what he's talking about. Whereas there's, jury's out on a lot of these coaches out there, to be honest. Certainly in previous, I feel like we're kind of like getting towards the cream of the crop at this point. Like most of these
Yes.
guys know what they're doing, but certainly in previous years, like,
Hmm.
yeah. um, but yeah, I mean, I obviously loved working with Udaton, Crystal. They're both great guys. Um, I had told GE that they should keep them several times
Uh-huh.
this year.
All right.
I also had pitched some rosters with, 4 guys from the team, 3 guys from the team, 2
Mm.
guys from the team. At no point was I pitching a full rebuild. I didn't think that that was a good idea. Um, and also, I guess one other kind of maybe slightly interesting thing for people that might not know is Javi did try out for us last year, and it was
Mm.
literally down to between him and Kelly as the final slot last year.
Oh, I had heard it this somewhere. Yeah.
And I was very high on Javi. I also liked Kelly a lot, but I was pretty interested in having Javi on the team last year. So it's cool to see him actually get into global this year, and he was very impressive to me at Ascension for the most part. Autumn is kind of an interesting one just for me personally because I feel like early on FPX he was like the superstar for them in a lot of cases, kind of like him and Life 1-2
Yeah.
punch. And I
No.
feel like last year he sort of dropped off a little bit into more of like a supportive like role
Y-
player. Like he was still opping and stuff like that, but he was definitely not like the carry of the team like he had been in the past.
Yep.
But then you look at his stats in ranked, and like obviously it is ranked, but there is sort of like a level of performance in ranked that just shows that a player is like insanely skilled at the game, and he is very very like his average damage per round is like one of the things that you can look at, and it's like one of the highest that I've ever seen. So he's obviously like a
Mm.
shooter, and so I'm very curious to see how Frost kind of like molds the roster on that because this team has a lot of firepower. Avi can shoot, Autumn can shoot, Crystal
Yeah.
can shoot, and Yudo can
True.
shoot. Um, and then assuming that they have Patman, I mean, Patman can shoot too. Even though he might be the
Yeah.
lowest firepower player on the team, he can definitely still shoot.
Yeah.
Um, my main question is, what the fuck are the roles on this team?
Yeah.
Because they have 3 initiator players and 2 duelist / sentinel players, and so It's definitely going to be an interesting one. It's going to require some creativity and definitely some convincing from Frost to get everybody in the right spots at the right time and comfortable in their roles, I think. But I do have a lot of respect for him as a coach, and so I definitely think that as long as he can get the players to buy in, which I think he probably will be able to, that they should be able to do some damage. But I am not ready to say that they're going to make champs, just because I think competition is pretty fierce out there. So.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Pacific is pretty stacked. Like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it might be an upgrade, but if everyone's upgrading, like how much have you upgraded, right? So I think that's a tough one. Also, do you mind if I take this chance to speak out about something that I've heard from the GE camp? All right, because this isn't the first time, and I think you were actually on the receiving end of this once. But so apparently, I've heard. I haven't confirmed. But apparently, I heard the streets have told me that the GE CEO said that they that Poppy isn't with the team anymore, but if they can't find a better controller, that they may bring Poppy back, was what people have told me. They were like, hey, the GE CEO just said this. Like, what do you think? And it's just like, why would you say that? Like, I'm just okay. Listen, first of all, if I'm Poppy, I don't want to hear that. I don't want. First, I mean, I probably also know what the negotiations were like. I don't want to be told that like I might be your second servings if you can't find anything better. It doesn't feel good. Like I get why you would say that for engagement. Yes, I get that. But it's like, and also it also just confirms, if anything, that at least some people internally are still looking for a different controller and that roles are not confirmed, right? Like it's a bit of a mess. And it just reminds me of this time. I think this was when you were on the team. I think it was earlier this year when maybe it was kickoff where the one of the management or CEO, like on their stream or on a membership stream, talked about the maps not being ready. They were like, yeah, well, like our like Abyss isn't prepared or something. And it was like, well, now we know. Well, now we know why it's perma-banned. Now we know you guys are gonna ban that every single time. Why would you say that while the tournament's going? I get it. Like I get that it's a fine line. Just so we're clear, I actually think we're entering an age in any category, not just esports, where people deeply involved inside almost have to be publicly engaged. Like that's just where PR is going these days.
Right.
I get that. You want some transparency, but come on, G. Like you're making it real hard for your guys to do their job. Like I just want to put that out there. Like I feel like basically I've always found parts that at least at minimum parts that I really liked about the GE players and coaching staff every time, every year. Your phase before that with Big Time and Spin, now with Frost, like these are brains that I'm really excited to watch, and then players as well. There's always been gems, but one last chance. Like I just want to see the team do their thing, man. Like so please, if this could reach anybody's ears, just a little bit, hold it in for just a little bit longer. Just let the season end, and then you can spill whatever you want.
Yeah, but, I mean, here's the thing. Like the GE management and everything, they're all, my experience working with basically everybody there has been mostly positive. They do tend to overshare a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And I will say this directly to you, Rushi and Vatzel and everybody working there. You have hired the most experienced coach in Pacific. Don't fucking meddle with what he's doing. Let him do his job, is all I have to say.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there. Just to hop off of what you just added as well, like in passing, whenever I've met and chatted with the guys, loved it. Like it's such a pleasant time to meet them at the arena and chat a little bit. Like they visited some other events that I was working as well, just because they were like visiting other events in Korea.
Yeah, they love esports,
and we've had some,
so they just
and we've like had talks about content and stuff. Like it's a good time, but it's just like sometimes it's like too much of a good time. It just gets carried away. So yes, yeah. I just hope this year we could watch it in silence from the sideline.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I think that's probably enough yap about my former team before I crash out even more. Let's move on. You know what? Actually, we're gonna keep crashing out because let's go talk about Zeta Division. Oh my god, what are Zeta Division doing, Chobra?
Dude, what are they doing? I don't understand, man. I
Okay, just to quickly go over what the roster is according to this website. Sugar Zero staying, XDLL staying, Echo added, confirmed, Absol likely signed after trialing with them, XQQ
Mhm.
confirmed to be the head coach again after joining partway through last year, Ryota potentially as the assistant coach, dropping Depp, dropping CLZ, dropping 1010, and dropping Carlisle. Um,
I-
continue.
yeah. I mean, I'm gonna give this. Listen, I'll just start with the grade. I mean, okay,
Don't
I'm
say
giving it
Z.
a.
Don't say Z.
No, 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 no. Although I probably should have. I should have. That was my chance, man. No, I'll give it a D because, quite honestly, it's hard to get worse than their performances before. So it's hard to give it an F. Um, but it's not inspiring. Nothing against the new players joining, but I mean they kind of needed something desperate. I think it's their last year of partnership before who knows what happens.
Hmm.
And if you're gonna make big changes, it had to be like good, like big ones, right? Otherwise, you probably should just at least kept this almost the same core. Um, yeah, I have no idea. The Dep one is not 100% confirmed yet, right? That was reported, but
It
that
was
one I
also
can
rumored that
imagine.
he's like already on another team too.
Right, on a
Yeah.
challengers team, yeah,
Yeah.
so that one, I think, is just a continuation of challengers Japan being this weird anomaly where the grass
Yeah.
is actually greener in tier 2,
Yep.
and it's like and then at that point because it's funny because May, I don't know if you had heard, but May was on stream, it was a bit of a small issue between Korea and Japan where he was kinda speaking about, like he basically kind of alluded that Korea sucks. Like, I hate living in Korea. It's rough. Like, I can't, it's hard to find things to eat and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, I mean, young kid away from home, totally get it. But in my
Yeah.
head, I was also like, I get your complaints, but those are the same complaints I've heard from the RQ guys, from the Paper X guys that, who have been here for
Hmm.
so many long times. And it's like, it does suck. I think this is actually worse because you actually believe it would be better in challengers, whereas those guys do not believe it would be better in
Yeah.
challengers SCA. So I think that's a problem that I do not know how you solve. And honestly, if Depp's like, dude, I want to chase the bag, be home, stream a little bit on the side, and just have a good time, it's like, I mean, it sucks, but also he's probably a little burnt out trying to do his
Yeah.
best. So yeah, I get it. It sucks. Yeah, I mean, Eco uh was better than I thought. Honestly, I wasn't very convinced, but he looked better than I thought on Duelist. Absol was honestly not impactful for me from
Hmm.
what I saw from them at SVL. XDL, I'm fine with keeping. Sugar Zero, definitely fine with keeping. I'm kind of surprised that like Clues was also let go. CLZ
Hmm.
was also let go because I thought he had legs. Like that's someone that you could try to build up within the Japanese scene. So that's unfortunate. And then also, the big question is like if you're not sticking with an all Japanese roster anyway, I do wonder why Eco over 1010.
Yeah.
Don't know if
That was my question. Is like, was he just a loan from T1 Academy? Do you know? Do you have any idea? Because I thought he looked really good. Obviously, his stage two
I
performance, his stats
thought
were
it
quite bad.
wasn't. Uh-huh.
But initially when he first came in, he was really good. And we scrimmed these guys, and he was dropping nukes in scrims. Like he was
Yeah.
legitimately like we scrimmed Zeta for the first time in a while because honestly we kind of blacklisted them because they were not very competitive in scrims. But then in stage two, we scrimmed them for the first time in like 2 or 3 months, and this guy was just absolutely farming. And I was like, oh, okay, this team's kind of sick.
Yeah. The initial outing, right? It looked
Yeah.
great. And then it was like, okay, you should actually try to keep this guy, like even if Depp comes back. And they did, but it's just yeah, I don't know. I don't think he was alone. I think initially he might have been,
Hmm.
but then I think he was fully signed on. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't obviously I know nothing about the comms. I know both Tenten and Nico should be fine, at least in-game communication, but
Hmm.
no idea, how else that works out. The one thing is I do know that Eco has always been a pretty like he's always had minimum good reviews about the what he brings to the atmosphere. Like on most of the rosters he's been on, people have always commented like, yeah, no, this guy's like he's
He's a
trying to
good
keep
teammate.
spirits up. Yeah, he's a good teammate. He
Mm-hmm.
tries to keep good spirits up. We saw that even in the complete mess of a team that Gen G was in 2023. He was on the bench, but he was always like rooting them on and doing his best whenever he was put in the server. So that could be it, right? 10-10's still super young. Even if he's trying to do that, he might not just know how to handle that. So
Hmm.
maybe, but yeah, that's the big question mark. I mean, Depp is like, listen, if he wants to go, what do you do? And then CLZ, I'm a little sad to see go, but it's not like I'm like saying that he's the one guy you should keep. But the Eco 10-10 one is a big mystery. Um,
Yeah, and then who's gonna be their last guy? I mean, is there a world where they go out and get Foxy 9? Like they need a Sentinel, I think, at this
oh
point.
yeah, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. I don't even thought thinking about Foxy 9 for potentially DFM, but
Yeah,
that could be it. Foxy 9. Foxy 9, I mean, he would help. He's got
yeah.
firepower, that's
They
for
need
sure.
shooters. That's one thing that I feel like Zeta's
Yeah.
always lacked is shooters on their team. So especially when you're losing Depp, who is probably your best shooter consistently,
Mhm.
I think probably going out and getting somebody who has some firepower would be a good idea. I also I gotta I gotta say, like, I'm fairly disappointed in Zeta just because there are good Japanese players out there. Like if I
Yeah.
was a Japanese GM, I'm just gonna give you some advice as somebody who feels like he knows ball a little bit. You need to go to Fennel and you need to steal Ace and Halls immediately. Those two guys deserve to be in tier one. Both of them can shoot with tier one players. Both of them have good instincts, and they would instantly level up either one of the Japanese teams in VCT.
Agreed. Agreed. 100% agreed. Yeah, it does feel like the Japanese both the works, honestly, but Zeta always was trying to like as I think I'm making the right comparison, like a kind of like a loud situation in America's where it's like, well, we're gonna like deal with, just the right finances that we've got. Like we don't want to really stretch
Mm.
ourselves thin. And it's like, no, obviously you don't want to go bankrupt because then you get kicked out. But you know, but um, but also like you sometimes you need a little bit of a Hail Mary. And I
Yeah.
agree. Like they haven't really had that. Yeah, I'm also not super convinced about XQQ as a head coach, although I
Hmm.
do think the break he had was good. I think it was very helpful. I think prior to that break, it was very clear that he was kind of in a rut. Like, just I
Hmm.
mean, the whole roster, right? They didn't have changes.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not super convinced. So I don't know, like, if you're making these big changes, is that the best idea? But then also, it's kind of similar to the Thai scene. I mean, am I thinking of any other Japanese coach that I'm like, you guys should definitely get this guy? Probably not. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But yeah, it's not one that I'd be very thrilled to grade, which is why I'm just gonna give it a D because it's not inspiring. I'm not gonna say it's a complete F.
Sure. Yeah. Zeta, check your inbox. I've replied twice.
There you go. Check your inbox.
All right, well, let's move on to Team Secret, another team in turmoil. I mean, when do we get a team that knows what they're doing?
Oh my! Yeah, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it, Elvin. I'm gonna give them an F in the off
Oh
season because
boy.
I don't know. I literally can't even understand what's going on here. I, the one player that is, I mean, I guess not even 100%. Sylvan is,
Mhm.
in fact, that's like the most unexplainable thing about
It
this roster.
very random, very random. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, I would be very curious if you have any thoughts to share because personally, I was rooting for Sylvan, was happy to see him on T1. He obviously didn't do as well as I had hoped he would, documentary aside.
Jesus.
And and but he was one of those players where I'm like, I'm fine if he stays on a team. He's not a player I'm going out of my way to pick up anymore. And then they literally went out as far away as they could to pick him up into a
E-
non-Korean roster.
yeah, it is pretty bizarre. I mean, I would guess. I'm trying to think. What can I say? I was contacted by their head coach about a player on Global Esports this offseason, just to give some thoughts.
Mhm.
I know that they have been shopping around trying to find people. Um, as far as Kelly S, great guy, really really good teammate, great guy. Um, Definitely a bit. He was like a bit raw this year in terms
Yeah,
of
sure.
calling and just kind of like leading a team. But he has a lot of intangibles. He's like a good vibes guy. He shoots well. He's flexible. So he's like the prototypical type of player that you would probably want on a team. So I'm glad that they kept him. Um, we I think I can say this. We kind of went out of our way to make sure that he was still in the league after we made our
Mm,
moves between stage 1 and stage 2. Um,
gotcha.
Honestly, I kind of love that they're keeping Jesse Vash simply because I feel like the dude can still shoot. I know he has like the games every now and then where he goes like 1 in 26, but then like he also single-handedly wins them rounds, and he's very experienced. Like I think who else are you going to get that's better to call? There's probably, I mean, I guess people would point to Javi maybe, but I mean Jesse Vash, he's the guy. Um,
Hmm.
but then yeah, the rest of the roster is like, what are we doing here? Like the Sylvan move is genuinely baffling. I can only imagine it's because when they made this move, they were coming off of trying Nizzy on smokes, Zespi on smokes, Wild Oreo on smokes, and none of them worked. And they're like, get us a fucking smokes player. And so maybe that's what they did. Um, but I'm a little surprised that they let Nizzy go because I think Nizzy was pretty impressive to me.
Yeah.
He's like a playmaker. He can shoot well. He seemed fairly flexible as well. I feel like Wild Oreo had kind of run his course on this team. Like he never really hit the heights that he needed. And then Zespi was sort of like, in my opinion, kind of a band-aid fix for them last year. So I don't think he really kind of fulfilled what he needed to do either. Um, the Envy move obviously is very
Ooh.
interesting. Um, I would have to imagine that he did a little bit of the I don't want to fucking play for you guys anymore.
Mm-mm.
And I've been here since the beginning. We haven't done anything. You've never built a roster that feels like it's competitive. Get me out of here. I
Yeah.
don't know, but that would
Right. Right.
be that's something that pro players do in other sports where it's like they're on a bad team for a long time and eventually they're just like, I'm gonna sit on the bench unless you trade me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so potentially Secret's like, well, I guess we can maybe sell this guy to a team that has money, and then we'll try and rebuild from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. It would make that's the only way it would make sense if it was an ultimatum from Envy himself, right? Because otherwise, it's like that should be the guy that you're probably building around, if anything. Then at least
Yeah,
skill wise. So
yeah. I mean, unless they literally just didn't get along, like it's possible,
sure,
because like
sure,
it's possible at this point. Jesse Vash and Envy have been playing together for so long, and they haven't had success. Maybe they just really don't like playing together anymore, and like,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
don't know.
possible. Yeah, those are things that obviously you just can't really know unless you're on the inside or you've heard, you've kind of kept close here. So yeah, no, I get that. Like the Envy leaving is a head scratcher for everyone, but we just don't know the circumstances. So it's like, all right, I mean, damned if you do, damned if you don't type beat, I guess.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Nizzy because I agree. I felt like Nizzy was pretty promising. I also agree with Wild Oreo. I was really excited for him. I thought we saw like one or two sparks, and then it just never really came together. So that's unfortunate. But then it's like, I mean, first of all, uh, like where are their players? It's
yeah,
December. It's the middle
yeah,
of December. Like you need some players. And then also they also did that weird thing of like, we're gonna like this is our experimentation roster for every league. And I was like, what is going on, man? Why are we announcing this? Just say you're playing with a certain roster. Like what's
yeah.
so yeah, a little bit very weird movements from Secret. But the good news, you kind of planted this in my head, but the good news is if the Envy news is true and comes to fruition, even if it's late, I would imagine that you now have a much larger sum of money than you thought you had to build a roster. So like,
You,
hopefully they
you would
can use that.
certainly hope so. You would certainly hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Um. Okay. We've given them a bad grade. Let's help them with their homework a little bit. They need a
All
they need
right.
a duelist, and they
Yes.
need, I guess, probably a. I mean, Kelly S can play Sentinel. They've got an initiator.
Yeah.
Kelly S can also flex. So they need either a Sentinel or a flex, and they desperately need a duelist because that has been one of the biggest glaring issues with this roster. I mean, Jeremy was pretty good, but they did not have a duelist last year,
No.
and it
No.
was a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Um, I
who we
mean,
getting?
if you're going with an English speaking roster though, which I imagine you are if you have Sylvan, I think you actually have some options. Uh, because just even if you want to make it easy for yourself, you could just look at Ascension this year, right?
Hmm.
And I think like Damara and Vera are both worth looking at if you're going English speaking anyway. Like I think
Hmm.
those are probably the ones where I'm like, I mean, I would have no problem with that. There's probably some others that you can kind of go for a little bit of a bigger bet. But that would just be how the trials go. But I mean those two would be kind of like top of the list for me where it's like I mean you might as well like at least give them a shot.
Yeah,
So
White Cat. I mean, he's a
yeah, White Cat
Filipino.
also.
Yeah. Go grab either Demara, White Cat, and then please, for the love of God, somebody get Shiro back in the league. This guy is way too good to be in tier 2.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good call. Yeah, so yeah, the other role is Shiro for sure. Shiro for sure. He's so good.
Yeah.
He was also dropping absolute
Yeah.
bombs at
He was
Ascension.
going crazy at Ascension.
Yeah, it was like him and Francis just took the gloves off. They're like, "All right, we're done. We're done with all this like IGLing
Yep.
and nonsense. We're just fragging out." So,
Yep.
yeah, no, that would be good to see. That would be good to see.
All right. Let's move it along. Sorry, we're taking quite a long time here. This is going to be the longest episode that we've done. I'll try and speed us through some of these other
All
teams.
right.
But first, let's go to Detonation. I mean, they're keeping May, they're keeping Cess, Akame, GN. They need one more spot. They're keeping their head coaches or their coaching
Mhm.
staff potentially. Jinboon gone for sure, which is kind of
Right.
interesting, but also
Yeah.
he was hit or miss.
Yes, I would say he had his good games and bad games, so it would have been fine either way. But this one I actually give a pretty good grade in that they're looking for what I would assume is an upgrade.
Hmm.
If they had stayed, I would have been like, yeah, it's fine. It's not, it's not super exciting. But I don't think they're going to international, but it's fine. They looked a little bit better. But they're clearly being like, okay, we want to do better. Like we want to get better. So I'm like, okay, well that's cool. Like I'm excited to see. The biggest name that keeps popping up in my head is Foxy 9, right? Looking for a
Hmm.
team on restricted free agency. So if Foxy 9 joins, I mean, firepower wise, big upgrade,
Yep.
and it should bolster them. It should allow May to feel comfortable just to barrel through. And I think keeping Akame and Cess, for me, big thumbs up. I think they were two of the bigger brains on the team. So
And who's
honestly, yeah,
IGLing? Do you know? Is it Cess?
I think now it's Cess. I think with Cess coming back in, I think Cess had taken over. I think Akame was
Mm,
doing it for a little bit, but I think Cess
okay.
had taken over. So should be Cess. And Akame kind of flexes around on different kind of fragging and flash rolls, op and flash rolls. So yeah, I mean, I think even like roles wise, that actually seems pretty promising. They can fit pretty well in the upcoming potential early half of the year metas. So I'd give it like a solid B, honestly, like a much higher grade than I've ever given DFM for anything in the past 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of one of those things. It's like you gotta capitalize on the May time. It's like when you have a player like that, you gotta capitalize on that window where he's there on the team. And so
Hmm.
I would really like to see them go get like one more big guy, like because I don't really feel like, I mean, Akame had some really good games last year, but I feel like they need one more big guy with May. Honestly, go get Depp. Like get somebody who can
Yeah.
who can just run in with him and like add some like real like demon mode to this team, because I feel like that's one thing that they really lack is if May does not carry them, they do not win straight up. Like that's just how it
Hmm.
is, and they need somebody else who can help carry the game.
Yeah. No, agreed. That would be the best scenario. That would be the
Yeah.
best scenario. But yeah, adding in Foxy 9, I'd be okay with.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to Gen G. Surprisingly, placed 7th, 8th last year. They have made some moves this offseason. Losing Munchkin was a big one.
Hmm.
Texture staying, Karon staying, Lakia coming in as the IGL, Ash likely staying, and then they played the recent event with Zinx, who is a
Hmm.
DRX Academy player. Just real quick about him. I didn't really scrim him at all last year because I didn't scrim the DRX Academy team, but from watching him at Soup, he is a duelist player. If he's not on duelist, I don't think he has nearly the same impact. So it's very, I don't know if he's going to still be there, and I feel like their roles are a little bit funky at the moment. What do you think about this
Yeah.
team?
No, that was interesting because he was a hard Sentinel player on Academy.
Yes.
So it was weird, but I agree that he looked a lot better when he was like just going out and fragging. So
Yeah.
And I think that's how he used to play. Because if a couple games I watched of DR's Academy, he was just like, I'm gonna hold my area and frag out and
Yeah.
take 1v2s. So that's good. Obviously, they didn't do that well at SVL. They hit a ceiling at SVL. I would say they would looked promising in the beginning, and then the IGLing was a little sluggish. It was quite simple. It was fairly simple minded. I mean, to the
Yeah.
point that we're catching crashies nonstop on replays saying that they're playing simple. They don't know what to do. Just calling them out. So that's gonna take some time.
Yeah.
But Texture Charon, I mean, I think this is a roster where it's like you always got to still bank on them being a contender to make it to an international, just by pure firepower. And then the coaching staff, obviously, they've proven themselves enough to say that they're contenders, right? Obviously, 25 wasn't that good, but
Yeah.
yeah, the Munchkin loss. I mean, again, it's like if Munchkin wanted to leave, which I presumably was part of it, then it's like, what do you do? The contract ended anyway, so I can't blame them too much. I think Lakia is an okay bet, although I think it's a long term bet. And then the fifth, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, if you're bringing in Zinx, unfortunately I don't think the roles work out very well. And that was my biggest question for this and another team we'll get to was just, I mean, how are the roles going to work out? Like
Yeah.
you're going to need players who can play double duelist, but sometimes you're still going to want a hard senti. Like you need a little bit more flexibility in 2026. So I've got big question mark because I also agree that Foxy 9 I don't think is the best fit either for
Yeah.
this team. So I like that they're looking. I have no idea who would be good for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I want to give them a low grade because I feel like losing your IGL and your proven IGL is a really
Mm,
big deal. But also, I think knowing that like this is for sure his last year, right? Like
right.
he like has to go
Yeah.
military after this, as far as I
Yeah.
understand.
There's like a 0.1% chance he can make something else work. Yeah.
Okay, so this to me, this kind of feels like them building for the future. Like they're not going to tank this year, but at the same time, like they're kind of going with maybe slightly a downgraded roster to build for 2027 and beyond. Obviously,
Mm,
they'll still try to win in 2026 and everything, but
sure.
um, I just don't see any world where you would let Munchkin go if you wanted to win for sure next year. I just don't see that happening.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so they kept the younger guys. They let the older guy go. Um, they have some role issues. Ash, not comfortable on smokes. Like I think that was blatantly obvious. Obviously, you've got a really good smokes player on your team, and Ash is kind of maybe a little bit more of a backline guy. Maybe you put him on Senti. I don't know. Maybe he's, but I don't know.
I will just say, and I'm convinced because of also how they played in the very beginning of the year when Yeoman was on the team, and then afterwards continuing on with Foxy 9 as well. It to me, it feels like Solo and maybe HSK Imperial together want they want to always have some variation of their 2024 meta, the heavy
Mm,
1-4, double rotate meta. And
mm.
so they want a sentinel who can be self-sufficient, who can go out and find timings and take 1v2s and 1v1s and create space.
You're
Which,
talking on
by the
attack
way,
then,
huh?
on attack specifically.
Yes,
Yeah,
specifically on attack, but even on defense, like to be able to say, sometimes I'm going to anchor, sometimes I'm going to go push out and get information, so we can just like tighten the map like immediately within the first 40 seconds,
hmm
because that was basically their whole game plan in 2024. So I think the problem they had with Foxy 9 was it was very clear that he just wasn't comfortable doing like that at the right times. He just couldn't figure out the right
mm,
timings. He was very good when the fight came to him, but
yeah,
he wasn't very good going and finding the right fight. So the it feels like that's the only way I can explain them putting Charon is like, okay, we've worked with this guy for 2 years now. He gets what we want. Like, we're gonna
yeah,
try this out. It didn't work out very well. And now you've got questions of why he's not playing controller at all, right? So, but I also the problem I have, and this is, I guess, where I would also not give them a high grade, is that I actually like that philosophy of like that's what we want to be our foundation of our strats and meta.
hmm
But also, if you don't have the player, you can't force it. Like you
yeah,
have to work with what you got. And if you can't find a player who can do that, you got to build it over the course of multiple years. You got to find some other way that you're going to work, which they eventually kind of did with Foxy 9 towards the end of 2025. But I think they need to give that up because I don't think you're going to find someone who has the experience and the brains and the confidence to do what Meteor did. Like
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah,
going
I
to
mean,
happen.
it's pretty hard to replace Meteor. Let's be real.
Yes. Yeah.
One other thing I will say is I'm definitely going to be watching this team pretty closely because from watching them play Haven, obviously they made the Haven comp popular, right? And they cannot fucking play Haven anymore.
No.
So that map was literally entirely on Munchkin's calling. And that
Yep.
means like that makes me be like, well, how much else was literally entirely on Munchkin's calling? So Solo, I think
Mhm.
Perry, HSK really need to like show their value this year because Munchkin's stocks are going up very quickly right now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's which is funny because Munchkin always gave a lot of credit to them unlocking his next level of IGLing, but it feels like he just absorbed all of it. I was like, all right, peace. And then he
Yeah.
just took it with him somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm gonna give them kind of like a C. I'm gonna give them like a C minus actually, I think, for their offseason. To me, not
I'm good
super
with that.
impressed so far. There's obviously talent out there. I mean, but yeah, I think it's kind of a work in progress for this team. Okay. More Koreans. Let's go talk about
Never ending.
DRX.
DRX.
So
Yeah.
rumored no changes, basically, just confirming that
Yeah.
Bane is in the playing five again, which he always should have been. This was always the best version of the team.
Yes.
As soon as they switched him back in, I immediately knew they were going to be good at champions because I was like, this team was good with Bane, and they were much worse with Estrella. So
Yeah.
yeah, good job, Termy.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, just for putting, re-signing Bane and putting him on the starting roster, they should get an A, right? Like that alone should be like they could
I'll
finally
give
figure it
them
out.
a B plus because it was very obvious to anybody with eyes that this is what the roster should have been from the beginning.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess it's not groundbreaking. But yeah, a team that I didn't feel needed changes. You could
Yeah,
argue maybe if you found someone else, sure. But Mako back to IGLing, he seems much comfortable now, having seen other people IGL, etc.
yep,
Dude, flashbacks transformation in 25 into this crazy second duelist is an insane transformation.
yep,
I agree. Bane is the glue that keeps the team together. And then, I mean, Hyunmin was my number one pick for this year in Pacific. Like, guy
yep,
I'm looking at, like, star
yep.
player that I'm banking on. So that's huge. So, yeah, overall, I should be fine. Should be a very strong contender, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
And we'll see where they go.
I think Hyunmin's the best Korean player in the league. Um,
Agreed. 100%.
Meteor,
Well,
Hyunmin, they're different types of players, but
ooh, that's
they're
funny because I would put Hyunmin over Meteor,
okay,
like,
okay,
confidently, but I would put Munchkin just because of the IGLing. Like, it's like,
sure,
okay, you can't replace this guy.
fair enough. Fair enough. My one question with this roster is actually freeing, which is kind of surprising because
Hmm.
he might have the best aim in the league, like straight up just raw aim, but he's very like kind of inconsistent in terms of his value. Sometimes it feels like some rounds he looks like a robot, and then other rounds he's like a little bit kind of lost in the sauce. Um, I need to see him kind of like take the next step. I think for this roster to be sort of like back where they were as contending for regional titles and going to internationals. I think, but yeah, I would give them a solid B for this offseason keeping
Yeah,
the roster together.
I'm cool with that.
All right, let's move on to E1.
No, man. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. When I first heard the announcement, I was like, I'm gonna give it like a C, C minus. I'm like,
Mhm.
I've got questions. I'm a little suspicious. And then now I saw them in SVL, not dropping a single map, but I'm like, all right, big A plus. Like, you've proven me wrong again, T1.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about KDG. I don't know this guy at all. Do you have any insight on who he is or like what his
Uh,
experience is?
so he's actually got a pretty long career because he used to be involved in Overwatch as well, coached in
Ah,
Overwatch
okay.
briefly as well. Funny enough, under the T1 family because it was the Philadelphia Philly Fusion, so it's the same family. Now he's back for Valorant. But I don't know too much. From what I've heard from the Overwatch guys, nothing to write home about in terms of results.
Mm,
There were apparently stories about how strict he was with the players, so look that up in your own discretion. But in terms of like, is he a good coach? It was like he was just like a coach that existed in Overwatch. And some people, I think, actually feel that maybe he didn't manage the talent he had very well at the time in Overwatch.
mm,
But then obviously you go to T1 Academy and he managed the talent very well. I mean, funny enough, what I look at in T1 Academy is the fact that no offense to Athena, but this guy was able to get a roster with Athena in 2025 to be the best team with upcoming talent. And the reason here's the thing, Athena was basically done competing. Like
mm,
he was pretty done with it, and then started getting back into it, gets picked up, but even back in the day, he wasn't exactly like a strong aimer. Like he had some good moments and he had some good brain plays as a sentinel. So for him to be part of that roster and still like for him to shine at moments on that roster, I'm like, okay, this guy can coach. Like that's what proved it to me because players like Exa, for instance, like people knew that he was very talented. So it's like, all right,
mm,
that makes sense. And same with DH. So yeah, so I'm excited to see what he can do. My biggest question was, and I guess this is still unproven, can he keep these players in line? Because
mm.
this T1 roster, as much as I love the guys watching them, these are not players that personally I would want to coach because they have all the reason to have big egos. They
Mhm.
have all the reason. Like most storied Korean players, most successful Korean IGL, like
Yeah.
double international MVP. Like these guys are gonna have big egos. And I don't think that's an easy job.
Yep.
So best of luck. Best of luck.
Yeah. So for me, um, I think this move is actually kind of incredible for them, and I'll tell you
Mm,
why. Just because for those who are not that familiar with the Korean scene, Munchkin is seen as a bit of a dictator in the teams that he's in. Like
mm,
he's known for being extremely like harsh in terms of his feedback
yeah.
and very
Yeah.
very serious about his job. And that might sound a little bit counterintuitive after the documentary, you know, but I think
Mm,
that that type of personality actually works very well with Stacks and Buzz. Because they are also very much like, let's hash this out and like argue
yes.
about what we did wrong. And I think that Munchkin is exactly that guy too. Izu, a little bit worried for his mental now that he's got Munchkin in the team as well as Stacks and Buzz. But
Yeah.
Meteor's worked with Munchkin in the past, and Meteor was a good mediator last year. So I think that like because they're so experienced and they're all very very serious about the game, I could see as long as they don't like fully mentally boom and implode, I kind of feel like it's almost a perfect environment where like even if things are going wrong, it's going to be like so much of like a job we have to win. Like we're for T1, like pride is like so on the line that these guys will potentially just like lock
Mm,
in those
yeah.
moments. And I don't think that there's anybody else that they could have added who would sort of like take that potentially toxic stew, add more potentially toxic ingredients to it, and make it better other than Munchkin.
You know what? I agree because the one thing my takeaway with the T1 documentary was, yeah, but it also to me, I was like, but it feels like this is a clash of different players dealing with things differently. And if
Yes.
anything, no one, I'm not going to blame any one coach, but like no one on management or coaching staff was able to moderate that, like bridge
Yeah.
that gap.
Yeah.
Like there were obviously people who wanted to take the soft positive feedback loop. And like you said, there's people who want a negative feedback loop. Just to add on to this, so people don't think that you're just, spewing things about Munchkin, Caron has famously said that he first joined Gen G and then he cried and he wanted to quit the team because
Yeah.
Munchkin's feedback was so harsh. Like that's
Yeah.
that's like how strong it is. So, yeah, when you put it that way, I agree. I hadn't thought about it with Munchkin that way, but when I heard people be like, I don't know, I've heard that KDG is like pretty strict, pretty toxic as a coach. To me, I was like, that might be exactly what you need as a coach to
Yeah. Yeah.
coach these guys. So this might honestly be the epitome of strict, like other cultures just could not comprehend that this could
Yeah,
work, but in Korea,
yeah.
it's acceptable, and you run with it as long as it gets results. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling. Obviously, Autumn leaving the team, DH going back to the academy. I mean, DH was very impressive. I know people had some questions about him, but to be perfectly honest, if you can get Munchkin, you got to get Munchkin. I know that some people were saying like, well, you got to get Stacks off the team if you're going to bring
Mm,
in Munchkin, but I think honestly, it kind of works out pretty well the way that it's set up because of that Meteor Munchkin connection, and then you keep Stacks and Buzz and Easy together, and you end up with like everybody's experienced, everybody can shoot, everybody's flexible. Stacks can go back to shooting instead of IGLing, where he was always at his best. Like I think people kind of forgot that this guy is like he's like the Korean Crashies, or like
yeah.
Chronicle esque in terms of his clutch moments and just being able to instantly like win these huge rounds. As long as he doesn't have to focus on what his teammates are doing, he's very, very, very good at the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. My biggest question was would they clash, but at SFL it does feel like Stacks is able to just add his thoughts and then just focus on the game. And
Yep.
like you said, Stacks was always best when his teammates were dead. So now, now he doesn't have to worry about him. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and you know who knows? Maybe by the end of the year, all his teammates will be dead because the environment will be so toxic. But you know, until that happens, I'm actually very high on this team, and I'll give them a nice A for picking
Yeah,
up Munchkin.
agreed.
Okay, let's move on to we've got two teams left. Let's talk about RRQ. Ewok stepping down. I guess the GM can't really do much unless they just wanted to write him like $1 million check or something like
Yeah.
that. They go out and get Jovi, who is relatively proven across a variety of teams. I was a little surprised not to see Warbirds just promoted, but
Hmm.
looks like they'll probably be keeping him. They don't make any roster moves. Did they need to make one, do you think? Or are we good to just kind of send them into the future with this 5?
Ooh, that's a good question. Did they need to? No, I don't think so. Could they have? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But as the resident RQ knower, I think the biggest problem, and this is one of the things I was most impressed with Ewok. The biggest problem with the RQ roster is it always feels like it's getting better. So it's
Mm-hmm.
always tough to find the right time to make a roster move. I think, and I think
Mm-hmm.
they've done very well doing very small incremental changes. But obviously, this year you had to have a coaching change, so maybe it is the best time to not make a roster change. The only thing I would say is I have question marks about if Crazy Guy's IGLing style can keep up in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was hanging on by a thread in 2025. It was very good, but it was hanging on by a thread in 25. The meta is just going to get more aggressive, I think, at least for the first half of the year. So I don't know because Crazy Guy's always had a bit of a slower calling style, slower operating style.
He's a
So I
Counter
am
Strike play.
curious. Yeah, yeah, he's a Counter
Yeah.
Strike player. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that's going to go well. But personally, I'm very excited for Jovi because I felt that he was one of the few coaches when he was on FlyQuest Red where I was like, I can actually feel the impact of this
Mm-hmm.
guy, like as a
Hmm.
coach, both in and out of the server. I loved what he was doing, loved how he was because I really don't think that at the time that FlyQuest Red roster would have gone as far if it wasn't for Jovi at the helm.
Hmm.
So I was quite impressed. Obviously, Frost always gave him his proper shout outs during their Talon era, so that we kind of have to trust Frost because otherwise, who knows what the division was. But he always give him his props. So I'm excited. I'm excited for what Jovi will do, and I think it might even breathe some new air into the team just because it's going to be a different environment.
Yeah, I mean, you're not getting rid of Jemkin. He was probably the best duelist in the league,
Oh
at least
yeah.
for most of last year. Cushy is incredibly good. He needs to like I think probably develop his game, but his game is already very good and he's extremely impactful. Monette, I think, kind of took a good step forward last year into kind of becoming this sort of secondary duelist flex, whatever you need type of guy. Jemkin's a little bit more of a passive duelist, and sometimes you need Monette to just like be
Yes.
the guy to go in, whether it's on Omen or a duelist. And so then, yeah, the two kind of slight question marks are the Crazy Guy IGLing slash individual skill. He's not the best shooter, but he's decent. And then Xfiro is he's a bit of a formulaic player. I feel like he kind
Mm,
of has his patterns that he does. and he doesn't tend to stray too much outside of that. He's definitely impactful, but I wouldn't say that he's like the top sentinel in the league. You don't necessarily need the top sentinel in the league, but also I think if I were a GM, I would maybe, look around for potential other options there. But again, like, they had good results last year. They went to champions. What else can you really ask for as an org other than just winning an event, which is very hard to do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think they made big enough strides. I do know that within the team, they've always given Xfero a lot of credit for he's like one of the guys that actually keeps them going, like on the comms and stuff. He's the one who keeps the energy up. He's the one who keeps the drive like during the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Xfero also does bring some intangibles that's very hard to see because he also doesn't seem like a very loud guy when you're watching him.
He's very low key most of the time.
Yeah. But when every time I've asked, they're like, "Oh, it's Xfero." Like Xfero and Monette, like those are the guys that are like keeping the jokes up. They're the ones that are keeping us going. So
Okay.
I think there's value there for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. And I wasn't saying like I think he's bad, but I just
No, I
I
know.
just have noticed
You had
he's like,
to make a change.
Yeah. Okay. Grade for them. I mean, probably like a solid B plus, like maybe even an A minus, something like that. You go out and get a pretty experienced coach, keep your good roster together, and see what happens in 2026.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Everybody's least favorite team, Paper Rex.
Yeah. Big changes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, so what we know is Wendler joining as an assistant coach. They finally got an assistant coach at the start of a season.
Yep.
And then Envy reported to be stepping in place of Patman.
Yeah, obviously it's just a rumor, but if Patman's out, like, there's nobody else it can be, basically. It has to be Envy, so.
That's true. Oh, man. So Wendler, I am very happy about because I've talked with him quite a few times. I think he's brings a lot to the table that a lot of Pacific coaches don't, like within the Pacific scene. Different ideas about comps and things like that. Maybe you could even argue like very kind of Western heavy influenced in Valorant. Obviously, kind of for those who know, when there's within the same school of thought as Anders, right? Kind of like Anders mentored him. Yeah. So there's that. Obviously, for those who also don't know, he did work with them at Champions as well, alongside Mini. So he was always already kind of familiar with them. But then, I mean, this is one of those teams where I'm like, I honestly, if you're only replacing one player, they're always still going to be a contender for top 3, I think, within Pacific. Just sheer firepower and star power wise, like they will just barrel through when the time is right. So it's hard to really argue, did you always make the best move? Because it's like, how much higher do you have to go?
Yeah.
But the Envy move, firepower wise, upgrade. Nothing against Patman. Envy's just like one of the best. He's one of the best players in the league.
Yeah.
So when you get him, you get him. But also, my fear is that who's pressing on the brakes now? Like, I don't think anybody's going to be pressing the brakes now, and the wheels are going to fall off again. So that's my biggest fear for this roster if it's Envy.
Yeah. So it is very interesting to say that, right? Because on paper, like, as good as Patman was, Envy is just a straight upgrade in terms of talent. I think everybody kind of agrees. However, there was something that happened when Patman joined this roster, which is that, number one, he forced them into the roles that they were always meant to be by taking the initiators away from Forsaken and just giving it to one guy. Forsaken had to play Smokes, and we're in a meta where Smokes being aggressive is very good, especially on like the Omen and, potentially, who knows, into the Harbor world next year, potentially. And so in that sense, I think they've learned that probably that's where they're at their best, and Envy still slots into that correctly, hopefully. But Patman was also kind of like the aura guy on stage. He was like the vibes guy. This team is a very vibes-based team, and we know that they have had vibes problems in the past. Like sometimes they get a little depressed on stage. A lot of Alex's timeouts, you can like hear him say, "You guys are not smiling enough. You guys are not happy enough. You guys need to be more like energetic together, communicating." And that is what Patman brought intangibly to this team, because he was always positive. This guy was always laughing. He was always making jokes. And I don't really know much about Envy personality wise. I feel like he's just kind of like another shooter maybe, but I don't know. Maybe he's that guy, and maybe they've learned how to do that with Panda, their performance coach, and all this stuff.
True.
But yeah, I'm definitely interested to see whether they can maintain like the mental side of things, because the shooting's going to be there no matter what, but is the mental going to be there?
Exactly. No, I totally agree. The intangibles and whether you can keep that together. But you mentioned a very important part. I think if Panda is staying as a performance coach, his value was also very tangible in 2025. So I think hopefully he'll know how to deal with the new roster and also just everything that's happening in 2026. My other big question is, I mean, if you're watching, I am curious how many of your comps the players will actually be able to play and also agree to play, because this is also a team that has very strong colors, very strong wants in the players. And whether you have the right theory, is a different story of whether they can actually execute it. So I do have question marks. But again, we put these question marks out there, but I always just want to make it clear to Paper Ranks fans, we're seeing it in the realm of Paper X standards of like, I don't know if they'll do as well. Like, I don't know if they'll be number 1. They might be number 3 or 4. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm not expecting them to lose to DFM again. Like, that's where I'm at. So
Yeah.
I do think they'll still be very strong.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any world where this team like crashes out and implodes or anything like that, just because they don't have vibes. They're too good to be bottom 4. Like, they're going to make playoffs, and they'll probably make at least 2 internationals.
Yes,
I would say.
Agreed.
But yeah, like it's one of those situations where once you've won, how can you get better?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, like, you've peaked.
Yeah.
You've peaked.
Obviously, they would love to win champions. Will this move let them win champions?
Sure.
Maybe. They probably could have won champions 2 other times without Envy on the team, and they just didn't. So it is one of those things where we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I kind of have to give them a pretty good grade, because like they did get an assistant to help Alex, and they got a firepower upgrade. As long as they didn't ruin the vibes on the team, I'll give them a nice solid A for this.
Ooh, A, okay. Yeah, I was gonna go with a B+, B, just to be safe. But I agree. The biggest thing is just you finally found an assistant coach that you're willing to work with from the very beginning of the season. I think that alone is it's a good GM move, right? Regardless of the actual results. So 100% agreed.
All right. That is all of the Pacific teams. Troba, final question for you. If you had to give me the top 3 teams at the end of the year next year, you don't have to give them in order, but just 3 teams that you think are going to be the best 3 teams of Pacific by the end.
Oh man. Okay. By the end. Listen, unfortunately, I think I have to go with T1 and DRX as 2 out of the 3.
Bias.
And then listen, T1 would have been at the bottom of the barrel, but if SVL, man, they just look so good. And then the third, oh god, I'm gonna do it, and people are not gonna like it. I'm gonna go with RRQ. Sorry, Paper X fans, but I'm gonna go with RRQ. I'm gonna go T1 DRX RRQ. I've got
DRX RRQ.
I've no pressure, Jovi, but I've got big faith in Jovi. So we'll go with those 3.
All right. I mean, sounds good. I'm excited to see what happens, Chobra.
Wait, hold on. You don't have to give your top 3?
No, I'm just the host. I don't know anything. I'm not an expert.
Fine.
I brought you in to be the expert of the region.
Fine. You get 1 pass this time.
But yeah, thank you so much for all of your time and insight into the teams. Kamsahamnida. And if you haven't subscribed to Choba's YouTube channel, link will be down in the description below. Go check him out. Appreciate you, man, and have a good rest of your day.